In 1888, a Russian-born mystic published a book that Catholic seminaries banned, Anglican bishops denounced, and American evangelical preachers said had been inspired by Satan himself. The book did not deny Jesus Christ. That would have been ordinary. What the book did was far more dangerous. It claimed that the Church had been worshipping the wrong Christ for 1,500 years. That mystic was Helena Blavatsky. The book was The Secret Doctrine, and what she wrote about the Jesus of the Gospels, drawing on the Talmud, the Essene texts that mainstream Christianity had ignored, the writings of Origen, and the records of the pre-Nicene Gnostic communities, was so threatening to institutional Christianity that her readers were excommunicated, her books were torched in Italy, and her teachings on Christ had to be smuggled back into Western theology 100 years later under the safer label of comparative religion. Today, with the Dead Sea Scrolls in our possession, with the Nag Hammadi Gnostic Gospels published, with the Vatican itself opening libraries on early Christian heresies that were sealed for centuries, almost every claim Blavatsky made about the historical Jesus and the cosmic Christ has shifted from heresy to mainstream academic conversation. The institutional church will not say this out loud. The serious historians of early Christianity have been saying it for 40 years. What we are about to walk through is the case Helena Blavatsky built, a case the Vatican tried to bury, and the parts of it that modern scholarship has quietly confirmed. To understand why this Russian aristocrat went to war with the Church, you have to understand who she actually was. Helena Blavatsky was born into the Russian Orthodox aristocracy. She grew up reading the Bible in 3 languages. She memorized whole books of the Old Testament before she was 12. She knew the New Testament better than most ordained ministers of her day. Christianity was her first language, not her enemy. What turned her against the institutional church was not the Gospels themselves. It was what she came to see as the systematic theft and corruption of an older, larger teaching that had once been the open inheritance of every spiritual tradition on earth. She did not reject Christ. She rejected the idea that the Church had any honest claim on him. Her central charge was simple. The Jesus that fundamentalist Christianity worships in the late 19th century, she said, is a manufactured figure assembled by Roman bishops in the 4th and 5th centuries to serve political power. The Jesus the Gospels themselves point to, properly read, is something far older, far stranger, and far more universal. He was a member of an ancient mystery tradition. He taught a path of inner awakening that had been guarded for thousands of years before he was born. And the Christ principle he spoke of was never meant to be the unique possession of one Galilean man. 3 specific heresies anchored her case. We are going to walk through each of them. The first heresy was the one the Church found most offensive. Blavatsky taught that the word Christ was never a personal name. The Greek word Christos means anointed. It is a title, not a designation of one man, but a designation of a spiritual condition. The same condition the Hebrew prophets had pointed to with the word Messiah. The same condition the Egyptian initiates of Osiris had pointed to. The same condition the Buddhist tradition pointed to with the word Bodhi. She drew her argument straight from the opening verses of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Logos. The Logos was with God. The Logos was God. And the Logos became flesh. The Logos, in pre-Nicene Christianity, was understood by every educated theologian to be a universal principle, the divine intelligence that ordered the cosmos, the word through which all things were made. Origen of Alexandria, the greatest Christian scholar of the 3rd century, taught explicitly that the Logos enters every soul that turns toward the divine. The Christic condition was available to anyone who walked the inner path. Jesus, for Origen, was the supreme example of this awakening. He was not the only one capable of it. Blavatsky said the Church reversed this teaching for one reason: political control. If the Christ principle was universal, then no priest, no bishop, no pope could stand between a soul and its awakening. Every seeker could find the Logos directly. The institution would be unnecessary. So in the early 4th century, when Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea and forced the Church to define its doctrine in a way that could serve the Roman Empire, The universal Christos was systematically narrowed into a single historical individual. The cosmic Logos became a man. The man became the only door. The door was given a single keeper, and the keeper was the Church. Modern scholarship has been catching up with this argument for 50 years. Elaine Pagels' work on Gnostic Christianity, the publication of the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945, the recovery of the Gospel of Thomas, all of it has shown that pre-Nicene Christianity was a vast, diverse, multivocal tradition where the Christ principle was understood in exactly the terms Blavatsky described. The historical narrowing happened. The political reason was real. She was right. The second heresy went further. Blavatsky taught that the historical Jesus, whoever he was, did not come from nowhere. He was a trained member of an existing mystery school. He was, in her terminology, an initiate. Specifically, she pointed to the Essenes. The Essenes were a Jewish ascetic community living in the desert near the Dead Sea in the period before and during the lifetime of Jesus. They practiced celibacy, communal property, ritual immersion in water, ceremonial meals of bread and wine, and a teaching that the kingdom of God was to be found through inner purification. They taught the imminent arrival of a messianic figure. They left detailed manuals of their disciplines. In Blavatsky's lifetime, mainstream Christian scholarship denied that the Essenes had any meaningful influence on Jesus or the early Christian movement. The Church taught that Christianity arose, full-formed, through divine revelation. Any suggestion that Jesus had been trained in an existing mystical tradition was considered an attack on the uniqueness of the Incarnation. In 1947, 56 years after Blavatsky's death, a Bedouin shepherd boy threw a stone into a cave near the village of Qumran and heard pottery break. The Dead Sea Scrolls had been found. They were the lost library of the Essene community Blavatsky had named. The contents shattered the official position. The Essenes practiced baptism. They practiced communal meals of bread and wine. They taught that a teacher of righteousness would come. They used phrases the New Testament uses. They lived in the exact region where John the Baptist began his ministry. The parallels were so dense that the Vatican initially controlled access to the scrolls for 40 years before academic pressure forced full publication. Mainstream scholarship today acknowledges what Blavatsky claimed in 1888. The early Christian movement did not arise from nothing. It grew out of a Jewish mystical tradition that had been preparing the ground for at least 2 centuries before Jesus walked into the desert to be baptized by John. He was an initiate of a school that existed before him. He inherited a teaching he did not invent. The Church spent 1,500 years denying this. The desert sands gave up the proof anyway. The third heresy was the most explosive. Blavatsky taught that the doctrine of reincarnation had been a normal teaching of early Christianity and was deliberately erased. Her primary witness was Origen. Origen of Alexandria, born around 185 AD, was for 3 centuries the most respected theological mind in Christianity. He wrote thousands of pages of biblical commentary. He was consulted by emperors and bishops alike. And in his work on first principles, he taught openly that souls pre-exist their bodies, that they have lived before, and that they reincarnate through many lifetimes as part of their journey back to God. Blavatsky said this was not Origen inventing. This was Origen preserving a teaching that had been part of the original Christic stream and was already, in his lifetime, beginning to be erased by the rising institutional church. In 553 AD, at the Second Council of Constantinople, called by the Emperor Justinian, Origen was condemned posthumously. A series of 15 anathemas were issued against teachings associated with his name. The first of those anathemas reads, "If anyone asserts the fabulous pre-existence of souls, and shall assert the monstrous restoration which follows from it, let him be anathema." A teaching that the most respected theologian of pre-Nicene Christianity had openly defended was now a heresy punishable by excommunication. The historical break was clean. After 553, no Orthodox Christian theologian could teach the pre-existence of the soul. The reincarnation thread, which Blavatsky said had been woven into the fabric of original Christianity, was cut. She wrote about this in detail in The Secret Doctrine and in her articles in Lucifer magazine. She pointed to passages in the Gospels themselves where Jesus appears to assume reincarnation in his audience. Elijah returned as John the Baptist in Matthew 11. The blind man whose sin caused his blindness in John 9, where the question only makes sense if the blindness could have been caused by a sin in a previous life. The institutional church spent a century calling her a fantasist. Today, even conservative biblical scholars acknowledge that there was real diversity in early Christian beliefs about the soul, that Origen taught what Origen taught, and that the Justinianic condemnation was a political act as much as a theological one. She was right about this too. So why did the church need her silenced? Because each of these three teachings taken together destroys the foundation on which institutional Christianity built its power. If the Christic principle is universal, the priest is unnecessary. If Jesus was the inheritor of a pre-existing mystery school, the church does not own his teaching. If reincarnation is real, the threat of eternal damnation in a single lifetime collapses, and with it the entire emotional machinery by which medieval Christianity controlled the souls of half a continent. Take away the unique Christ doctrine, the originality of the gospel teaching, and the single-life eschatology, and you have removed every lever by which the church kept its grip on Western consciousness for 1,500 years. Blavatsky knew exactly what she was doing. She wrote in Isis Unveiled that her work was a direct attempt to recover the ancient wisdom that institutional religion had stolen, corrupted, and weaponized against the very seekers it claimed to serve. The Catholic Church placed her writings on the index of forbidden books. Anglican bishops preached sermons against her. American Protestants accused her of demonic possession. The attacks worked in the short term. She died in 1891, mocked, slandered, and exhausted. Her name became a byword for charlatanism in respectable circles for the next 60 years. Then the Dead Sea Scrolls surfaced. Then the Nag Hammadi library surfaced. Then Elaine Pagels published the Gnostic Gospels in 1979 and made the case Blavatsky had been making since 1877 acceptable in mainstream academic theology. Then Bart Ehrman, Karen King, and a generation of biblical historians began publishing books showing that pre-Nicene Christianity was exactly what Blavatsky said it was: diverse, mystical, open to reincarnation, centered on a Christic principle far larger than one Galilean teacher. The forbidden gospel was not forbidden anymore. It had just had to wait 100 years for the rest of the world to catch up. What does this mean for you tonight, sitting wherever you are sitting? It means the Christ the institutional church preached at you, if you grew up inside that machinery, is not the only Christ the Gospels were ever pointing to. It means there is a reading of the New Testament in which the figure of Jesus is a doorway into the same universal awakening the mystery schools of Egypt, India, and Persia had been guarding for thousands of years before Bethlehem. It means the inner Christ, the Christos within, the Logos that took flesh and that the Gospel of John says was the true light that lights every human being who comes into the world, is not a foreign god you need a priest to access. It is the deepest pattern of your own consciousness, waking up. Helena Blavatsky was condemned for saying this. The institutions that condemned her have since had to walk back, one quiet academic article at a time, almost every position they used to attack her. She died believing that the recovery of the esoteric Christ was one of the central tasks of the spiritual century that lay ahead. We are living in that century. If these ideas resonate with you, we encourage you to go directly to the source. Helena Blavatsky's Isis Unveiled contains the fullest version of her teaching on the historical Jesus and the cosmic Christ, and remains one of the most extraordinary works of comparative spiritual scholarship ever written. A link to the book is in the description below. The veil continues to lift. May the light of ancient wisdom illuminate your path today and always.